But
Hey guys, what's going
well,
on?
I'll be damned.
Dave, how
you
you
doing?
doing? It's nice to see you, buddy.
Joe,
Hey, man, how you
what's
doing,
going
man?
on,
Good to
guys?
see you.
Well, you tell us.
Yeah.
Are you busy these days?
Tax guy.
Busy. It's tax time. You know,
Yeah,
it's
right.
like we always get busy this time of year. You know, we don't do taxes, but we're always talking. Everybody wants to talk about taxes.
A few minutes ago, we were talking about that. It is tax time,
It
and
is
most
tax
people
time.
think that's just a transaction. So you go online with TurboTax, or you call your accountant. I have an accountant
Right.
I've been working with for 30 years. I really wonder if they actually know how to do it. I mean, I know they know how to do it mechanically, but the whole idea of actually getting ready for tax time so you don't pay more than you really need to pay, that's where you come in.
Well, yeah, I mean that. You know, it's interesting you say that because there's two sides to this, and it really gets confusing at times because there's the tax, like you said, the transaction, filling out your 1040.
Right.
How much tax you got to pay this year? Do you write a check? Do you get money back? What's the deal? So it's this year. Then there's really what we do is, you know, it's how much tax you paying in the long run. You know, over the next 10 years, 20 years.
Right.
And that's where planning comes in. But it's interesting you talk about that because one of the things I always kind of go over with people is, you know, first of all, whenever you're talking about taxes, you want to get advice from the people who know what they're doing. So you do have, you know, your tax guy, your tax, preparer or accountant or whatever he is, right? Because there's differences. You got guys that aren't CPAs that are just preparing tax returns.
Right.
They're business. You know, the thing we got to remember is they're businessmen.
Right.
Right.
And unfortunately, you know, most people, how do you judge your tax guy? Most people judge their tax guy by, how did I do this year? Did I get a refund or did I have to pay? Now that's a really bad way to
Right.
judge your guy.
Most
Oh,
people do
yeah.
it that way.
Yeah, that's
Everybody
Yeah.
does it that way.
Exactly.
So what that does is, you know, your tax guy, your accountant can either try to fight that, or he can just accept it as reality. And yeah, this is the way people are going to look at it regardless. I've had this conversation with clients that say, oh, I had to pay tax this year. I'm like, all right, well, that's not a bad thing, right? Because your number is what your number is.
Right.
No, yeah.
It's just a matter of, did you have enough withheld either from your salary or from, you know, other things that you might have done? Or sometimes there's just transactions that throw off taxable events that, you know, you don't plan for, like, you know, capital gains. You might have sold some stock or, you know,
A house.
Right.
you
House.
sold a
Uh-huh.
house or things, and all of a sudden, ooh, you got to pay capital
Gotta think
gains
about
on that, right?
Right.
But
Inherited something.
well,
Yeah?
a lot of times that, you know, if there was a 401, you know, if you inherited an IRA or 401k, well, there's big tax issues there that
Right.
you need to deal with. But the point is that most people are worried about this year. So the tax guys, a lot of them that I talk to, find themselves in a quandary, or is it a conundrum? I get those confused, you know. But it's
I'm in
like,
them all the time. I should
Yeah.
know the word.
they say, well, you know, should I be, you know, doing real tax advising to my clients and looking at the long run when that may cost them money in the short run,
Sure.
right? So if you go to your accountant, you're going to judge your accountant. Everybody judges their accountant by, oh, I have a great guy. He gets me a refund every year. Well, are you really doing what's right? Like, how do you get a refund? Well, you do things that you don't have to pay taxes on. So if you do a bunch of tax deferred stuff, right?
Right.
How's it? I'm confused with this Inflation Reduction Act and everything. How is that going to affect my taxes?
What's that?
The Inflation Reduction Act
I mean, I hear
and-
about this stuff and I don't know what's going on.
Okay, whole other issue. But there's all these different acts that were passed.
Right.
Yeah.
What was it? The omnibus.
It was omnibus, means there's so much stuff in it we can't even tell you.
So the one that was done at the end of the year, that actually has a bunch of issues, and it would take us, you know, a whole hour or two to go through
I was
everything.
gonna
But
say.
that's where Secure Act 2.0 came in, right? So if you remember back in a couple years back, what was it, 99 for 20, they passed the Secure Act, which is an acronym for something, but, you know, basically changed a lot of the retirement planning tax rules. The biggest one that most people are aware of is that the required minimum distribution. So again, this is where, if you have your IRAs or 401ks, when you reach 70 and a half, you had to start taking money out because Uncle Sam wants
the tax.
He's like,
Tax,
okay, we're going to let you defer your taxes so you get money back every year. You pay less taxes, right? And that's where you get to the discussion between tax deductions and tax credits.
Right.
But everybody wants to, pay less this year. So what we'll do is we'll defer our taxes, right? Kick the can down the road. So, if you contribute to a 401k, an IRA, traditional, the money that goes in there goes in pre-tax. Okay, so what the government wants you at 70 and a half, you used to have to take your required minimum distributions, which just meant they want you to pay tax on that money. Whether you need it or not, you need to take out a certain amount every year, which is based on the lifetime, basically life expectancy tables. And you take that money, you pay the tax on it, and then you do something with it, right? You put it in another account.
Right.
Well, the original Secure Act raised the age to 72, and now Secure Act 2.0 raises it over time up to 75.
Oh, okay. That's a
Okay.
big change.
So, for me, for instance, I'll have to start taking RMDs at 75. So if you're, there's kind of like a graduated thing where, it's 72, then it's going to be, if you turned 72 last year, you had to take it at 72, but then this year, if you didn't, you get grandfathered and you take it at 73,
Right.
and it just goes up, and then ultimately, I think if you're born after 1960, I believe it is, it's 75.
I'm thinking of a couple of friends of mine who really ought to be talking to you. While you're talking, I'm thinking some of them are in their 30s, some of them are in their 60s. The conversation about taxes is a transaction. It's the same. However much you made, whether you're 30 or 60, that's the number and that's what you work with. But
Right.
your long-term horizon and the planning aspect of it is radically different if you're in your 30s versus in your 60s, and so I need to tell both my young friends and my older friends they have to call you
Sure.
because it's not the
Everybody
same
should
for
call.
both of them.
No, but actually, some of what should be done could be the same. But the reasons for doing it could be vastly different. Okay, I think one of the biggest things that we tend to hear things, and they become, whether it's conventional wisdom, old wives' tales, whatever you call it, but things become institutionalized, right? So it becomes part of. Everybody says, "Oh yeah, that's true." I call it. It's funny. It's one of the things I call when we talked about it. And you guys saw in the book we said that is call people bobbleheads.
Right, yeah.
Because I can sit there and say, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket when you retire, and people have heard that forever. Well, they've actually heard it since the 80s,
Sure.
and everybody thinks it's true. The problem is it really?
No, it really depends.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
We know taxes are going up. We know taxes are going to go up starting in 2026 unless Congress does something, because all the Trump tax cuts, as they call it,
They all sunset.
a lot of it's sunset in 25. So in 26 it goes up, and if you look at those rates, the people that are really going to get punched in the teeth for that one are the middle class and lower middle class.
Really.
Yeah.
The people that we've heard
The
over
people
and
that
over
were
again
supposed
will
to
be
be helping.
spared of tax
Right,
increases.
Right. No, they're actually going to get it. If you look at the numbers, they get it the worst.
So those people, it's funny. A lot of people, I think, imagine that working with a guy like you means that I'm a millionaire and that's why I need to work with you.
It's
But there are an
just-
awful lot of ordinary people, blue collar people
just
even, that
planning.
are earning enough money to want to know how to keep it.
Right.
And
well,
that's
here's,
where you come in.
here's the question. If you go back and where did that come from? The whole you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. Most people don't know.
No,
They just
exactly.
always heard that. Well, if you go back to the 80s,
Yeah.
tax rates were very high. So in the 80s,
I do remember that.
yeah, in the 80s, what happened was that's when the whole IRAs and all this tax deferral stuff started. Made a lot of sense. If tax rates were very high, you had to bet that they're going to be lower in the future. So, okay, that's a safe bet. They're really high. They're probably going to be lower in the future. So if I defer taxes, if I don't pay my taxes now and I can pay them later, that's a good deal.
Right.
However,
It was logical then.
right. People still assume that that's they don't know why, but they just assume that that's still the
It's
gospel.
not so true anymore.
Because they've
But-
heard it all the time. That's why.
You know,
Right.
it's funny you mention that because I remember in the 70s working as a kid, tax tables, that the top tax rate was like 90%.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I mean, so,
Yeah.
but there were a billion ways to shelter your money.
Right.
You know, that was, and that was what guys who made that kind of tax bracket would do to try to keep
Yep.
some of it. That's not true anymore. It's
No,
flatter
well,
than it used
well
to be.
here's the thing. So, you know, let's look at it the other way. So, if tax rates now, if you look at like a chart of tax rates,
Yeah.
they're very low. They're like at somewhat historically low levels from an average standpoint. So, if you had a bet, and what I always do is because people get when you start talking taxes, they kind of glaze over. I said, well, look at interest rates. I mean, interest rates were zero for since like 2008 when they started all that stuff and quantitative easing and all that nonsense. Interest rates have been effectively zero for a long time.
Right.
If you had a bet, would you bet they were going higher or going lower?
Well, people have been saying they're going to go. Now they are.
They
I
are,
mean,
but you
actually
knew
are.
at some point they
You
had to
knew
go
that
higher.
they couldn't
Right.
stay at like
Right.
0.3%.
They couldn't stay right. They
Yeah.
couldn't stay that low. You knew if I said, guys, you got to bet higher or lower,
Gotta bet
you're going to
higher.
bet higher.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's where we are now with tax rates. Mm-hmm. But there's another little thing that you got to attach to that, and that's the $31.5 trillion debt that we have that has to get paid.
Right.
Because now the problem is, as interest rates normalize, right, you get back to a normal interest rate curve,
4%,
normal
5%.
4 or 5%,
Okay.
six,
Uh-huh.
maybe 6 long-term rates, that's good for savers, but we're not, as a country, we're not a saver, we're a debtor to the tune of $31.5 trillion. So we have to pay interest rates. We have to pay interest on that. That interest, just to kind of close that loop, the long bond rate, okay, that's financing the debt. So when the bonds go back up to 6% or something like that, well, the country's got to pay more. Well, the government doesn't have any money. Where do they get it from? Eventually, tax rates, if you had to bet, tax rates are going to have to go up. Even, aside from the sunset in 25 and higher rates in 26, if Congress doesn't do anything, something's going to have to get done. Otherwise, now we may be dead, but our kids, grandkids
They're
are
gonna
going to
have to deal with this.
are going to have to deal with this. And
Okay.
the only
you guys
way
want
to
to come
do
another
it,
cup of coffee?
absolutely.
All right,
Let's
good.
get
Let me
some more
get it
coffee.
for you. My turn.
You're going?
Yeah, I'm going.
All right, Joe.
Okay. Yeah,
You're all you.
There you go.
Go get some coffee.
There you go.
Great.
That's perfect.
I'm Bob Hokertl from Kings Road Brewing Company. I'm here to tell you about a brand new show on RVN Television called Cooking with the King. Each week, we're going to taste and sample some of the best beers the Kings Road Brewing Company has to offer. And we're going to talk to area chefs and restaurant owners as we pair our beer with their signature dishes. We're going to teach you how to cook and eat like a king. Cheers.
A stroke can be easy to detect. A loved one can't speak, perhaps they can't move. But there's another sign of a stroke that many of us can't see. It's called spatial neglect, and it can occur during or after a stroke, causing distorted visual movements. Fortunately, there's a solution by using optical prism technology during rehabilitation. If you or a loved one have experienced a stroke, ask your doctor about spatial neglect. Spatial neglect. See the whole picture at KesslerFoundation.org.
Are you burned?
Well, fresh cup of coffee never hurt anybody.
No.
Irish coffee would be better.
Yes, it would be. But, Dave, now we're talking about it. A lot of people just think short term, what's in front of me right now. But I think long-term planning should be taken care of too. Don't you think so?
Well, I think,
of it.
and that's really what we do from a tax standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really look at this year because, and there are things that we do that can help for this year.
Right.
Okay. But it really is the planning for the long term because, there's a lot of reasons. So again, like we were talking about, if you think tax rates are going up, right? If you buy in and say, okay, yeah, tax rates are at a low, which means they're probably going up.
Right.
We've got huge debt, which means tax rates are probably going up because there's really no other way to finance
gotta
that.
be paid.
I mean, I'm sorry, maybe, back in Reagan's days, the numbers were such that we could grow our way out of that, right? But the numbers where they are now, you're not growing your way
Not
out.
growing our way out of
It's just not going to happen. And all you're going to keep doing is spending more money, increasing the debt every time something happens.
Right.
So people really have to ask themselves a very simple question. If you think tax rates are going to be higher in the future and maybe significantly higher, especially if you're a mid to high wage earner, do you want to pay your taxes today,
Right.
or do you want to pay them some point in the future when you have no idea what you're going to owe?
Right.
And that's really the key. It's like if I said, Joe, if you came to me and you wanted to borrow some money, right? And I said, sure, Joe, no problem. I'll loan you whatever you need. And then you came, and then what's the first thing you want to know?
What's the
What's
rate?
the interest rate?
What are the terms of the
What's the rate?
loan?
And if I don't pay
And
on
I
time, you're
said
going to
to you,
break my
I said,
legs?
Joe, don't worry about it. I said, you know what?
You're right.
You don't worry about it. 15, 20 years from now, when you pay me back, and I'll let you know what the terms are then. Would you
Knowing
take,
you? No, come on.
Sounds like a great deal.
Would you take that? But isn't that what we're doing with tax deferral?
Exactly, sure.
Because we don't know.
we don't
It's a
know. We don't
completely
know.
unpredictable event.
I mean, if it hits the fan, and without getting political, we could see a lot of scenarios here.
Right.
Where remember, when you have to start taking distributions, if you've got this big nest egg,
Yeah.
because you've done what you should do, you save, and you've done everything you should have done. Now all of a sudden you've got these big distributions that you have to take. Well, that could put you in that, the higher tax bracket where now all of a sudden somebody says, you're one of the, pesky 1%ers,
Right.
and we're going to smack you with some serious tax rates.
Right.
So I'm a believer, I think I just look at it strictly from what are the odds kind of standpoint. I think the odds are that things are going to be higher, or tax rates are going to be higher, so why not pay your taxes now? And even if you've got a lot of deferred stuff, there's ways, things like Roth conversions and
Right.
stuff that you could now convert money. And there's other reasons for that, because what's it going to cost you in the future?
Right.
Okay, that's a big one. But I think the problem is, it's like we've talked about, the big number and the small number. The big number being, your account balance, and your small number being how much money, what monthly income do you need?
Yeah. Right.
So if you have $1 million in your IRA, do you really have $1 million?
Yeah. You don't. You're going to owe taxes on that when you take the distribution. So
That's
you
right.
don't have.
Right.
But there's still a lot of people out there, accountants, financial advisors, media folk, everybody who look at that and say, having $1 million in that IRA is better than having, whatever the equivalent, 750, 800,000 in a Roth, because wouldn't you rather have more money than less money? Right?
Except you
Yeah,
don't.
right.
You don't
When you go to
because
get it.
the cost when
Yeah.
you talk about I need a retirement paycheck, right? I need so much money each month to fund my retirement. Well, how much does that cost you?
Well, and,
So-
and the 20 or 20%, 20 or 25% that I have to worry about now might be 30 or 35%
future.
when I actually go for the distribution 15 years from now.
Right, you just don't know.
So that's a really good point. I
Yeah,
don't think
it's
more
always
people
better to
even
deal in
think about
today's
that.
dollars.
Yeah, it could be.
Well-
It could be, but there's a lot of scenarios where, and we've run these with Roth conversions, and we look at different scenarios, and it does become, in one case, it becomes a bet because if you convert today, interest rates are higher or tax rates are higher in the future, you win.
Right.
You convert today, tax rates are lower in the future. Theoretically, you lose.
You lose.
Right? Well, one side of it is you just talk it's diversification, right? You're just diversifying your tax risk, and you want to diversify across the board. It's not just stocks and bonds.
Right.
That's a mistake that a lot of people make. But there's another reason why you would do this. Let's say you're a person, you got money. Let's say maybe you have a pension, you've got your Social Security. You're doing okay. You live well within your means. Like you're people we love, right?
Right.
You got a little money. You have no debt. You live within your means, right? Best people that we work with are
Right.
like that because it's easy. Right? It's
Yeah.
they're not. I don't have to worry about people like that. So if you're one of those people, and let's say you're also a saver, well, okay, so you may have a pension and some other stuff, so you may need very little money each month in addition to what you have coming in from your pension, Social Security, and maybe some other things. So you're never going to spend your money. Let's say you got that $1 million and you're
Right.
never going to spend it. It's sitting in an IRA or a 401k, whatever the case may be, tax deferred. So, okay, you got to start taking some of it. But it keeps growing, right? Now you don't have to take it till 75, so you retire in your 60s, and now it's growing for 10 years. Maybe it's doubled. Maybe even taking some money out, maybe you're going to double it every 7-8 years or whatever, right? So now your 1 grows to 2, your 2 grows to 4. You got a lot of money. So now you pass away, and that money goes to your kids. Right? You've lived a decent life, died at, not premature, but well, how old are your kids now?
No, that's a good question.
Your kids
great question.
your kids are now in their highest earning
They're,
years.
they're
Right, yeah.
working hard.
So
in
if
their
you have
30s and
kids that
40s.
are making decent money, or even it doesn't matter what they're making. Now the tax rules are they can't take that over a long period of time. The government wants their money. They've closed a lot of these things. They've done away with what was called the stretch IRA, where you could take it over a longer period of time. Now you got to take it quicker. I mean, they keep changing rules and everything, but you got to take that money.
You got to take the money, and they want the government
And they want their
wants.
taxes.
They're planning
So
on.
What's going to happen is you got to take that money over, I think, 5 years now. What happens to their taxes now? Let's say they're high wage earners. Now all of a sudden, in today's brackets, maybe they're in a 22-24% tax bracket. But let's say it pops them up, and because this is a huge chunk of money. Let's say you have one kid. You're passing $4 million. Kid gets $1 million a year. Now they're bumped up to the highest tax bracket.
No, and
So
Yeah,
now
that-
instead
that's-
of
without knowing it's coming.
right, instead of you paying 22% on that money, let's say, and passing it tax free, now all of a sudden you've paid tax on the way up because of your distributions, everything else. And what they're doing is that money's costing them, let's say 37.5%.
murder. Okay.
Right?
Right.
So it costs them, just do simple math on $1 million, 10% different. Let's call it 10, it could be 15%
Right.
different
A significant amount
on a
of money.
tax rate at their highest rate. It's $150,000
Well,
that's a lot of money.
that
Yeah.
they actually paid. And that's where the tax planning comes in.
So it's not just tax planning; it's also estate planning, because after all, that's
It
part of it. It
all-
really is all
yeah.
one thing.
It is.
So it's not just how am I going to get through taxes. I mean, everybody's got that short-term horizon, April 15th thing in their heads, but we're talking years, not
That's
months.
where, yes, and that's probably the biggest hurdle that we have sometimes that I face talking to people is getting them to look long term.
Sure.
Okay, you know, kind of circling back, Secure Act 2.0 just changed a lot of the rules for you know, qualified plans like
Right.
401ks and things. Where now it's going. Companies can now make their matching contributions to a Roth. Now the only thing is you got to pay taxes on it this
Right.
year.
Well,
Right? And that's an education point. So it's like, okay, well, you used to contribute, let's say, you know, you used to contribute $20,000 a year and the company would match, let's just say 5,000. Okay? Well, so you got to look at it two ways. One is if you want that same money going in, you're going to have to pay money out of your pocket. Or if you're going to just pay that in after-tax dollars, right, which it is, but
Right.
if you're going to lower your 20 down to, you know, whatever it is, you know, say reduce your investments by 20% because you got to pay the tax on it
Yeah.
and have the rest withheld.
if I got a couple of friends who are thinking about starting a business, and you mentioned Roth IRAs, and could you help people who are starting a business actually set up programs like that for their companies?
Yeah, because again, there's now the opportunity to do a Roth SEP, okay, which there wasn't before, and you know, different things like that. So yeah, this is really where, you know, we work closely with the accountants, you know, with people's
Right.
tax planners or you know, tax advisors, tax accountants, or whoever it is, and you know, and it's really important that, you know, especially somebody who's starting a business, that they understand who their guy is. You know, you don't want to just go to a tax preparer, you know, the H&R Block guy, and hope that he's going to give you advice for, you know, starting a business. Okay, he'll tell you how to account for it and what it means on your, you know, to your taxes, but you really need to go to, you know, you need a good financial planner, tax planner, and you need a good accountant.
You know, I got a couple of friends of mine who always ask me these questions.
Yep.
And that's like asking the carpenter to do brain surgery. I'm serious about that. It's not the right thing to do. So, you know, what can I tell them to, you know, get a hold of you for?
Yeah, what's the
You know,
best way to get a hold
easiest
of you?
thing is just go out to don'trunoutofmoney.tv.
Okay.
And you'll see a link there. Go to the website at agsaurora.com, and they can get a hold of us there, and happy to help any of your friends out.
Great.
David, we got to talk. I
Hey.
mean, I can think of a couple of reasons
Yeah,
to talk to you
pleasure.
myself.
Let's head to the bar.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks very much.
Coffee's on you
That's
next
great.
time.
Yeah.